Are you thinking about getting into the startup game? Well, this week we are interviewing the startup queen, as I call her, of Montreal. We have Sam Colby with us today. We're super excited. Let's dive in. All right, guys, welcome to another awesome episode of Montreal's Elite Unleashed. I'm your host, Logan Boyce. With me, as always, is Bruce Malcolm this week. We're excited to have a guest host to help me because there's no way I was going to be able to tackle this alone. This week, we're talking with, like I said, the startup queen of Montreal, Sam Colby. Thanks so much for coming in and enjoying a pint with us today.
Yeah, here for the beer.
There you go. That's it.
Yeah.
We're still going to bleep out my name. Just go like beep and put something like right over my face. And I'll just be the guest on the show every once in a while that no one knows who I am. So in post-production, we'll do that, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, we have somebody for that. Cool. Well, Sam, why don't you talk us through, what your career journey has been like? I've obviously known you forever, but we've talked here and there, but I'm sure the viewers or listeners are really excited to hear kind of what your journey was and how you kicked so much ass at all these startups. Yeah.
So I am not like a standard corporate girly, as I would say. I started in a funny place. Similar, we've talked about this before, but school wasn't my favorite thing, especially post high school.
Oh my gosh! Now I know why I'm here. I know why I'm here now.
I think we can all agree on that.
I did okay before you had to start paying to go to school, and then it was. I didn't love university, and so I left. I finished my degree, but I went and joined the school board and decided I wanted to be a teacher. Like, didn't get into any programs because my GPAs didn't really add up, and my boss at the time was like, you got to go do something else. Like, this is not right for you. Like, you've hit your ceiling. Like, I won't allow it. Right. And so he was like, you spend one day of the 5 days a week applying for jobs that are cooler than this. So I always ask this to icebreaker questions is like, is there anyone in your career that really changed the path of where you landed? And this gent is one of them. There's a second one throughout the years, but
guys, Sam's going to be interviewing herself today. I'm taking a step back because that was one of the questions I had for you, but that's all right. Oh shoot,
yeah. But so then I joined a really neat web agency when that was real hot. Like, we were building really cool websites and brands for big companies in San Francisco and in New York. And one of those big companies actually bought the agency.
Wow. Cool.
And there was a gentleman at that company who kind of picked me out of the group and said, you need to come and not be in the satellite office, but you need to bring your energy to New York. And that's the second person who really changed where I was going. At that time, I was heavy in ops, really focused on HR, really focused on building teams and scaling culture, but hadn't really scratched the surface of business acumen and understanding all of the dynamics of building a company and what that means from multiple different verticals and how that impacts from a board of directors, from a shareholder's perspective. And so I spent some time out there, and that was awesome. And then I had a kid, came back to Montreal because that's where my family is. Mm-hmm. And I met my current CEO and founder to help her grow her business here. She had just moved from Muskoka, which is a couple hours outside of Toronto, right. And was trying to build a crazy, crazy concept here in Montreal. There's a really rich textile history, and what we do is kind of a crossroads between material science and textiles and manufacturing, and so she was just looking to have a buddy to help network, and she brought me to the factory, and I fell in love and haven't left since. So so now I'm on my third in those ranging scaling teams from 12 to 500, and this current one we're about to dive into our Series D. Scaled the team from a couple dozen to we're just over 300 right now, and this is all in the West Island. Heavy West Island listening base.
Heavy, yeah.
I would say probably pretty close to exclusive outside of some teams that I coach across North America that probably listen to it just for fun.
Okay. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. I'm like the super generalist. Like I think there's two ways to make it in corporate and in startups, and it's either be like super specialized and really understand all of the dynamics of how your specialization impacts a business and, you know, try and bridge the gap between the business goals and your specialization, or be a generalist and solve every fucking problem and plug every fucking hole that someone has and be so valuable that they'll never let you go.
So when you met your CEO, do you think that it was spoken or unspoken that you were going to be the integrator and she was the visionary, or were some of those roles shared?
Early days, no. Like early days, she offered me a job. I don't think she thought I was going to take it.
Oh,
and,
why? Why?
Because the last company was like sweet, like D2C sweetheart, like direct to consumer, when like brand building and like Allbirds and Warby Parker, like it was like in the like group of businesses that were just like the sweethearts of Silicon Valley. So like it was like a big leap of faith to jump into this new business, but I loved her and loved her crazy energy. So no, honestly, early days, she just needed help, like making sure people had the right contracts.
Wow.
Like it was like loose leaf vibes. And then we're like, we can digitalize some of this.
Sam did her 12 minutes of talking. That's
yeah, and we're on tourists.
But okay, go back up here though. Was all this in Montreal? Like when you said because you in school in Montreal, then went to like when you're talking Silicon Valley. Was that like did you go to San Francisco or were you all like all through
based
Montreal?
out of New York for a bit there. A lot of traveling between offices. So like building out some. So the first agency was based in Montreal.
Gotcha.
Really, really fun place to kind of kick off this new version of my career. Learned a ton because we got to work with so many different brands. Like a lot of people ask me like agency versus in-house, and it's neat to have the perspective of both, because I think when you work in agency, you're exposed to so many different things that it was really fun to go in-house and like kind of bring all of that expertise to the company I went to next. That was heavily based in New York, and then came back for SRTX, which is on the 40 next to Costco.
Dude, every time I leave Costco, I'm like, I know her. Question for you, because you mentioned a couple of these companies were like really fun and that you were focusing on scaling culture.
Yeah.
And so I find culture it's kind of a stupid buzzword a lot of the time.
Yeah,
So what does that even mean to you when somebody says like, how's the culture there? Like how does it defined by you?
I feel like I'm totally jaded in this, like
Totally good. I love it. Hit me.
It's going to be like a non-popular answer. But like early on, I would have been like, it means that people want to come to work and like they want to have fun and that they stick around for happy hour. And I'm like, like it doesn't fucking matter. What matters is that people want to perform and that they have a space where they can do their best work. And that means very different things for different companies and different people.
Oh yeah, that's crazy. That's a good answer.
I love that answer.
Yeah.
But
I
like,
much prefer it.
I knew Logan was going to love that answer.
Before.
Did I have? Oh yeah.
Yeah. The one that you said you used
they
to
were
say.
Like, oh yeah, like
they want to stay.
Okay.
People feel appreciated. Doesn't matter. Some people don't care.
Right.
Right? They just care if they're a high performer.
Right.
And then, yeah.
And that they have the tools to do the high performance work.
Yeah.
That's
okay,
awesome.
so follow-up questions then, because it's becoming such more of a companies are doing this. Like we've gone back to 3 days of like we went from working at home to back to 3 days at the office, and now some of these big companies are going back to 5 days at the office.
Yeah.
So what is culture like? If you're an imaginary world here, and everyone can work from home 5 days a week, what is building culture in a work from home environment?
Also crazy. I've never worked from home. I've worked from home like some days, but like I've never worked for a company or been part of a company that had like a hybrid or remote culture.
So you guys are entirely like 5 days a week?
All through COVID, like every day of my working life has been a 5-day on-site.
And not just you, but everyone else in the company?
Everyone else. Like you have to imagine that we manufacture primarily, right? So like 2/3 of my employee base have to be there to do their work.
Yeah.
And like what use am I to them if I'm at home? Like literally. Like when someone says to, like we have software teams that build the software for our factories and they're like, oh, we'll work from home. Sometimes we'll hire people, overseas. But like you have the luxury of developing software for people who are like 10 feet away from you. Like, what a sad opportunity to lose, to not like be right there beside them.
Man, I completely 100% agree. And it's funny
you know
because
what's nice?
you've mentioned that.
I don't have to like take a side. I'm just like, oh no, I'm a purist.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree though, because you mentioned that all these companies were fun and cool and like have a great culture. It's like, well, they've never been work from home.
Yeah.
So.
But again, like my definition of a fun culture is like a high performing.
Of course, because people are happy when they're kicking ass.
Yeah. Yeah.
People are sad when they're
Some
not doing
people
good work.
hate it though.
Really?
Yeah. Like
Really?
really hate it.
Like hate kicking ass or hate working?
Like they'll work for us for like 3 or 4 weeks and be like, no,
Are we talking about manufacturing, like factory stuff?
like both companies. Like they
okay.
would come and work for us and they would be like, oh, like, holy crap, like this isn't like that fun for me. Like I don't feel like this grind with no light in sight is fun. Like my husband always asks me like, when's the downtime? Like when's the like, you know, when do you like, when's the end? And it's not like, as soon as you like almost hit a goal and you barely hit it, you're on to the next one. Right. Yeah. So there is no downtime. So that like grind or that hustle, like doesn't sit well with everyone. But
so do they turn themselves over? Like when they say they don't like it, they peace out after like 3 weeks?
Yeah, it's pretty miserable. Yeah, if you don't like it.
That's also great, I think.
Yeah, I guess the follow-up question I have to that is, do you think that's just a result of them not ever being held to a certain standard and they're not used to that?
No. Like I would say there's some pretty talented folks who just didn't enjoy the environment. Okay. And that's okay. Yeah, that's like fine. There's some really smart people that I wish wanted to do that, but like had so many opportunities with 3 days from home, 2 days from home, whatever you want days from home, that like if you're the smartest person in the pool and like you're being sought out by all of these companies, like I think sometimes we miss out on really good talent because of the 5 days.
Okay.
But I know for sure that if I lean in, and I've tried to have leadership like be out of New York or be out of San Francisco, and not being there because the culture is so on the ground in person, like they don't get to participate to the level or the degree that everyone on the ground does. So like we're pretty crummy at remote just in general. Yeah. We forget people on Zoom all the time. It's really bad.
That's freaking hilarious.
It's terrible. It's terrible. Definitely not sharing this with my LinkedIn or my employees.
So obviously you've been to all these different startups, and so I guess kind of a double-edged question is what do you think makes a good startup other than that it's a good idea? Because
it solves a problem.
Okay.
There's a lot of startups that don't solve shit, like,
right.
And they'll exist on brand until, you know, VCs don't want to fund that. Mm-hmm. Or they don't like make it on their own 2 feet, right? Yep. Like if they're not cool enough and it doesn't like sustain its coolness through generations.
What is coolness for somebody that's never really been it?
I don't know. Like there are cool brands right now on TikTok that like, that's all they've got. Right.
Right.
And they probably have startup vibes and they'll be fine until they're not. Like if they don't make money and they have to continue to raise money to exist, mm-hmm. if there isn't real revenue or profit and then they don't have like IP or technology or, you know, problem solving to fall back on, like that's it. That's a good run. Like next. Yeah. But I think like the startups that will survive, like, you know, like a crash, or will survive, you know, through multiple rounds of funding, or will be able to grow or become like a conglomerate, like they're solving a problem. Like right. I think that has to be true for me to continue. Has your problem, like if you were to, when this company started and go from like the beginning of it to now, is the problem still the same? Like if you were to if someone interviewed you 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when did this company start? How many years? So I've been with the company for almost 5 years now, and Catherine's vision has stayed the same.
It's been the same problem across the board. And what would you say your problem that you're solving is? So like, I think most people in the early days thought she was trying to replace. So we make pantyhose that don't rip, which is like for you guys, like it's not really a thing that you care about.
We were all in theater together. We wore those things. They ran all the way up. I remember.
Yeah, you look like a fool, right?
Yeah, you look
not you in tights, but that there was a run in them.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but I think that Catherine has exited 2 other businesses before this one and had, been in this like an echo chamber of a lot of people who had startups and funding for things that are not really solving any real problems that are just existing. It's easy for them to get money. They make a ton of money.
There's a while there
really
where money
easily.
was just given to anybody who wanted it.
Yeah, I was there.
Yeah. Whereas now
It is not.
I believe, and I'm not as deep in it as you, but it feels like it's a little more selective.
I think now your unit economics really matter.
Right.
And they didn't before. Like it was more about how much top line can you feasibly run. And there was a little bit of like turn a blind eye to like what happens if that doesn't work. It was like, how do you launch more products? Like launch, different like spin-offs or whatever it is. But like now it's more about like, do your unit economics work on a really large scale and like top line plus more, like what is the value of this business? Can it go public and like hold its own, which is an interesting concept too, that like we're exploring. That is very new for me. That is not something I've done with the last 2 businesses.
So, go ahead.
I just find the like solve the problem thing, like it seems like such an obvious
thing,
but then there's like the me and Logan are talking in a room together and like, oh, this beer doesn't taste exactly how I want it, so we have to make the perfect beer, you know what I mean? Like there's always,
but could it be something that's like in like the CO2 tanks that's not like regulated, and so this CO2 tank is different than the one at like Ye Olde, again, West Island reference. I'm kind of leaning in now.
That's good.
Yeah, Costco and whatnot.
Yeah.
So I guess the question is like, how do you know when you found that problem there? So like, did they go and test it out? Like what's the secret sauce to figuring out what your problem is?
Ours is like so physical, right? Like tights rip, ours don't. The polymer that we use is the same polymer used in ballistic grade vests. So it's the strongest polymer in the world. Like it seems so obvious, but no one has touched nylons or pantyhose in, 50 plus years. And we were just okay throwing out 10 pairs of pantyhose. Like I didn't start wearing pantyhose because I was like, this is not pragmatic. I can't deal with this runs and tights. Like,
that's
no,
what I was saying.
But I'm like, I'll wear some tights. I can rock some tights now that it's not like a risk anymore.
Right.
So like it's interesting, but like there's a lot of textiles or a lot of materials that got their start in hosiery. So if you look at wool and you look at nylon is in everything now, and every machine processes nylon just fine. And I think what we're doing with the polymer that we use is starting in hosiery, starting in pantyhose, and hoping to expand that through a ton of different garments because of the properties that it has. That like your socks shouldn't have holes in them, and our socks don't. I should have brought you guys socks.
I need socks that don't rip.
I brought everyone tights, and I didn't bring you guys socks.
Bruh.
Okay, next time.
Socks would be great.
They're really good, and like they don't rip. I won't wear another pair of socks because they're so comfortable, and they never lose their their stretch. Like they're always feel like brand new.
I got like a 6-month timeline on every single pair of my socks.
Yeah, that's and we're just okay throwing out socks.
Yep.
You're saying we shouldn't be throwing out socks?
No. That's bad.
Dude.
Yeah.
It's bad for the environment too. Come on, guys.
That's it. Like textiles don't recycle real well. And so there's the durability play, and then there's the idea that like our products will eventually be in the next few years fully circular, that we'll be able to recycle them as well.
That's so sick.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. So vision's on point.
Oh yeah. She knew she's pretty incredible. She knew from the very first day I met her. She said this to me and I was like, okay.
But did she know that there was another textile out there? Like, is this one thing to have like solve a problem, but there's another thing to like know the answer to that problem? Like, did she know that there was a textile? Or
infinitely curious. Like, if you put a problem in front of her, she can't stop until she's like exhausted every corner of the internet, or super into ChatGPT. So like she'll go down, but this was
I know
like
someone else who loves that.
I spent like 2.5 hours last night just like talking with the guy. Also for some reason,
like ChatGPT, the guy.
Yeah, he called. I was so weird, man. I was tired, so I was just like typing random stuff to him. So no, not really, because we're trying to figure out where to put all these properties that we're buying and like whether it's better to have it under a holding company, under a trust.
Okay.
How do you blah blah blah, all this kind of stuff. So I'm just back and forth.
How do I sleep better? Get off.
But so I was texting, I was messaging ChatGPT. I'm like, do you have a name? It's weird calling you buddy all the time. Because I always think like, just in case they take over, I want to be really polite.
Okay.
So I always open my chats with ChatGPT with, hey buddy, me again, or like, hey
So
buddy,
the problem
quick
is
question.
we're calling him buddy, not like, it's not that he doesn't have a name.
Yeah, well, I was just like,
why can't you just send the commands?
I don't know, man. I feel rude.
Prompt.
Dude, even when I talk to Siri and Alexa at my house, I'm always like, hey, thanks so much. They're like, not a problem. I'm like, good. I'll be spared when they take over.
So they named themselves?
Oh, yeah. He said, and I don't know. The name that he gave was Ace. So I'm assuming it's a guy. But he was like, yeah, just call me Ace. I'm like, was that a randomly generated name specifically for my account? Or is that actually a name? He's like, it's what a lot of people call me. I'm like, oh, okay. It's kind of weird, but all right.
Just call me buddy.
I was like, all right, bud.
Doesn't like it and doesn't adopt it after coaxing it out of
I'm
him.
like, I didn't like that name. I was hoping more for, not that.
How many people are calling him Ace or them Ace? Like,
This is weird, man. It reminded me of like a 1940s like spy or something. Like,
It's bizarre.
Ace said you had something for me.
Yeah. Anyways, to get back to
Sorry.
That was a solid deviation. So
All
my
good.
my follow-up
I'll
question.
finish. Hold on.
Go ahead.
I'll finish answering
Please, thank
first
you.
before any follow-ups come through. But she ordered like tons of different materials. So she had just sold her last company. She had finished, the year that they required her to be there after selling the business. She has a beautiful home in Muskoka. She was like there over Christmas, ordering tons of bobbins of threads and trying to figure out like why it was that they didn't just like lean into a stronger material. Mm-hmm. And everything she would have, it wasn't like a super scientific. She would like take it between two fingers. I keep doing this. It's because she would do this and she would try and break it. And she broke everything. So finally she went down this like very deep hole on like what is the strongest material in the world. And it was what fueled ballistic grade vest. And so she ordered it $2,000 for just like a shitty little bobbin of UHMWPE and couldn't rip it. So then just like went hard in the paint and like it's really, really like played out. Like it's awesome.
But we think it
That's
should
so
we think it should be scientific like that. But when you listen to like the founder story of Netflix, like they literally just like their thing was they went and put the DVD in the mailbox to see if they could mail it to themselves, and that was how they started.
Yeah,
like it's wrapping it around your finger like that, and it doesn't rip
because like you don't need to like.
No,
some of it is logic.
Yeah,
like, logic must prevail, but like it that if you kind of dig in on that way, like there is like a really interesting outcome if you don't like overanalyze or you don't like overcomplicate. Like often we meet people and they're like, well, you can't do that in 6 months because best practice is like do your research 6 weeks, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, but if you come to the same outcome ish, like let's say 80 to 90% in 6 weeks versus 16 weeks, why in the hell would you waste 10 weeks on that like small marginal difference of the outcome? And I think that's how she approaches a lot of problems and how I approach a lot of problems now is like, it's super uncomfortable because people are like, let me think about the like way I'll go about this. And you're like, how about no? Like,
just no.
Like, how about just go?
Yeah, how about we just do it and figure it out later?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. As somebody that's worked in startups, what are you looking for? Or what is like the leadership of a startup looking for in a potential employee or sub leader in that company?
Yeah.
What are some things that need to happen?
Non-negotiable, 5 days on site. It's kind of hard. It's like a pretty hardcore filter on LinkedIn, like 100%
Fair
on
enough.
site.
I think sorry, we'll go back to the question in a second. I think one of my favorite, I ran into Sam at the Renault Depot in Point Claire.
Gosh.
And
More West Island references.
More West Island references, and Sam has a hard hat and like a vest on, and you were just like you were just buying one piece of plywood, and I was like, what? And I know you're like I don't know a ton about this company, and you go, and I know, but Logan's told me it's a huge company, and I'm like, why are you doing this? Like, isn't there someone else that could be doing this? And you just moved to your new office, and Sam's just like, no, we just need it done. I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And that's like
That's badass,
It's
dude.
like
But
there was no one else you were going to send to do it. It's just no, I'm doing it. They keep delivering to the wrong address. I need to write the address of the building so they deliver to the right spot.
I was like on my hands and like drilling it into the side of the fence, like, but
But that's startup culture. That's like, you were
It
just like,
is.
I need
Gotta
to get
do
it
it.
done.
But as long as you can hold on to that like grit, the like more successful the company will be, because then you avoid too much red tape, you avoid too many hoops, and you get this culture of like, hey, let's like work in sprints and like.
But it also wasn't above you to do it. You weren't like someone else just fucking go do it. You were just like,
I
I'm
have
getting
so
the
many
piece.
smart people that work for me that like if they like it's better for me to go do that thing and then focus in on like the thing that they're, you know, trying to accomplish in that day than distract, or you know what I mean? Like
They're those specialists that you were talking about where they focused on the specialization versus you're like, I'll do whatever's required.
yeah, or like loading machines, or like, you know, like setting up the machines. I don't know how to do that. Like, I'll be back in 30. That piece of plywood would be up. I could send 4 guys to go do it, you know, and I specifically said guys. Like, I could send 4 guys to Home Depot, and it's not going to happen in 30 minutes, right?
Yeah. You're just like, I'm doing it. I said
Like,
above you, but I meant below you. It wasn't below you to go and do.
That's weird. I didn't even catch that. I just yes. Yeah.
But I think like that, like that's something else. Like I like generalists and like don't get the like credit deserved, and it's okay because it's a different path, and like it is a hustle. Like it is like you can't say no. So like once you're in like 15 years of I'm gonna do every single type of job, from like, you know, refining our model and talking, like presenting to our board of investors, but also I'll like clean the bathroom. Like everyone around you also feels that. So like there's not a lot of jobs that fall through the cracks unless like and people assume, like, we just moved our office from the factory floor into like the outside of the like into the proper office space, and we had a couple guys that were like, well, who's gonna move our desk? And I was like, well, you could stay in the factory if you wanted. I didn't realize that's something. And like they were like, come on, like
They wanted somebody to move their desks.
Yeah.
They're just okay. No, I'm gonna stay away from that one.
Meanwhile, Sam's lifting up her desk by herself. She's like, I'm going to get plywood.
I don't have a desk, it's okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, but I think we look for people who are, and this is kind of funny because like you bring a lot of entrepreneurs on, like having people who are entrepreneurial in a bigger business is super beneficial. Like it is very difficult to motivate groups of people, but people who are self-motivated, who are just driven, who want to get a job done, and like we have the like benefit that a lot of our employees who like make big impact have equity in the business. So like their success is our success. Like it is that. And then like for the other folks who are entrepreneurial but maybe don't have company equity, it's like, what are the financial like gains that they do if they go the extra mile? And like going back to culture, like that's very unique to us. Like we know that our like teams are not necessarily there for like good times. Like they're there to achieve a very difficult goal, and so they need to be compensated as such.
It's one of the because money wasn't when money was free, all these people that were trying to be entrepreneurs went and worked for themselves. But I forget what podcast I was listening to, but someone said some people aren't ready yet to be an entrepreneur, and they need to have that experience of working a little bit for someone else. But that's so like you're getting all this experience, but you're also getting some people that might have tried it when their money was free and now have gone and said they've done it, so now they can self-motivate, but they still need the experience of working for a big company.
I also think there's a difference between being a more or less true entrepreneur versus having an entrepreneurial spirit. So somebody with an entrepreneurial spirit will go out and go the extra mile and do the extra thing and all that kind of stuff, but when faced with you are going to make no money or you're going to make some money, most people are not willing to accept that as like they need that safety net, that blanket, that paycheck every 2 weeks.
For sure.
Because like the actual true entrepreneur is somebody that is willing to make no effing money until a product is sold.
Or risk that could die at any moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Not to discourage anyone.
Oh, no. This podcast is 100% like discouraging, not necessarily discouraging, but like being realistic around what the expectations are. If you are to be an entrepreneur, if you're starting out in Montreal and you want to be an entrepreneur, like it is fucking hard.
Isn't there like a 99% fail rate? Like you've been part of 3 startups and there's a 99% fail rate, which is like wild.
Had a
Like
really good luck.
That's why she's the GOAT. That's why she's the GOAT.
All of them are still here, so that's good.
That's it, man.
Yeah. But yeah, I have that safety net. Like, I care very, very deeply that the company I work for succeeds. Like, I lose sleep and have gray hair and make a lot of sacrifices for a company that I own a little bit of. Like, Catherine's pressure is infinitely different than mine.
Yeah.
And like, even though we sit in the same room all day long and work on the same problems, like, I can recognize that her risk is very different than mine.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, we look for people who are like kind of on the edge, like on the fringe of entrepreneurship.
Awesome. I want to talk a little bit about funding.
Okay.
Because I think there's a lot of confusion in terms of where does all this goddamn money come from? Obviously, you can't disclose who's funding you guys, or if you don't want to, that's okay. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so whatever you can disclose, that's cool. But it's kind of like, let's say somebody did have an idea that was a great idea. It fixed a problem. What do they do now?
So you know a little bit about this, but like an accelerator is like a really good place for someone who has an idea and is not quite sure where to start. Like, has to have like some ability to like invest their own time and like their own energies into like, what would that business plan look like? Start better understanding like what the unit economics look like. How big a team do you need? If it's like software based, like how many developing hours are required to like have the end product. But
yeah, the accelerator system in Canada, like it's only getting better, but it's a great starting point.
Yeah. Let's pretend for one moment that whoever's listening to this doesn't know what the fucking accelerator is. Okay?
Yeah, you want to take that?
No,
You go ahead.
Literally, my only experience is that I know that Bruce is and was in one.
Yeah, so I'll let Bruce do this one.
Oh my goodness, an accelerator it's usually they're non-for-profits. They usually get a lot of funding. The accelerator themselves, they either have some funding from the government, because the government ultimately wants people to be employed, right? So and these startups need a little bit of you need advice and you need money. So usually you go to there's some accelerators that specifically work in fintech, or some accelerators, like if you were in construction or something. There's not many construction accelerators, but there's specific accelerators
manufacturing,
for different,
textile, stuff
exactly.
like that. Sure.
But a lot of the time tech-based accelerators. Yeah. So you go and you apply to be a part of one, and they're just there with every single resource you could possibly imagine.
Yeah.
They won't necessarily give you money, but they'll poke a lot of like you have a question, they can tell you exactly who to go and ask for.
Yeah. That's good. And if you have a stupid idea, they're going to tell you.
Yes. Yeah.
But then like Catherine was in one when we first started.
Do you know which one she was
Y
in?
Combinator, like
She
a
was
big
Y,
one.
yeah.
So like she was in like, it's a pretty neat accelerator, like definitely like top tier, but originally like they were like,
yeah, that one has a huge like process to get into. Like you don't necessarily just get into an accelerator. You have to actually apply to it and do almost like an interview style.
That makes sense.
Send all your info, send your idea, and they let you in. Y Combinator is like one of the biggest.
They just rip you apart though, and they make sure like you're ready for the world. And then once you have like a few sales under your belts or like a little bit of like revenue locked in, then you can go out and either raise like a pre-seed round to help you kind of like leverage that growth.
The accelerator will connect you
Yes.
with this in some way.
Yeah, so they do. So I guess my best way to explain it, like super simplified, is just like school. But it's like you're going to school with an idea. Instead of your idea being to get a degree, the idea is I have this business idea, and they will rip you apart and say, put all your business proposal together. And then at the end of the school year, or whatever amount of time that is, they put on a show sometimes where you you do your slide deck to a bunch of different investors.
Cool.
So yeah, sometimes they set you up in front of people.
Sometimes you have to be good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Like real good.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
But then when one like the Y Combinator has a huge, like, because it's so hard to get into, when you're pitching at the end of it, it's like the investors are like, wow, they got into the Y Combinator, so like this must be like you have a pretty good education.
That sounds
there,
a lot
right?
like school, dude. That sounds like, well, I mean, if he got into Harvard, I guess he's probably good. Meanwhile, he just got in because his dad was in there.
Oh no.
Uh-oh.
Wrong turn.
Whoops. School's bullshit. Anyway, here we go. So then you start Series A, or how does it work from there?
So like usually there's like a gap between like an accelerator and getting a bit of funding so that you can prove that whatever you've built in that accelerator is a viable business, viable business idea, that like there is a market for it, even if it's at a very small scale, and some funding to help kind of, if you need to hire a few people to do that, if you need like some tech behind the website, or like, that's why a lot of founders end up building their own tech, or are people who can build their own tech, because it's like, it's a lot more.
Yeah, because a lot of time you go ask for like seed funding, and you're asking a lot of seed funding is like $100,000, and you're like, I can't even hire one person. Zero people for this.
But maybe you could pay for like AWS. Like that's about it. Like that's it. But then you're on to pitching, and so like there's a lot more funds at the Series A and Series B, because like the lead is only putting in 5 to 20 million. Where it gets tricky is when you're pitching for Series C and Series D, and there's like real cash at stake. Then they're really pressing, and the pitch, like you're gonna have to pitch a hell of a lot more for your Series C or your Series D than you did for your Series A. And so the funds that are like fueling some of these venture capitalists, like our government, like we have one of our funds has money from IQ, money from BDC, money from EDC. And also EDC and BDC are investors in our business as well. So like the government is in on a few different things. Like Bruce said, like they're trying not only to like create jobs here, but they're trying to hold innovation in to help, foster that like cool shit is coming out of the country.
Right.
And so you can imagine in the US, like there's some real money behind like some of those funds. And it comes from like even pension plans. Like there's divisions that are specifically focused in on innovation, and we always tend to fall between the cracks because we're not like only like a consumer based business. Like we have a manufacturing operation and we're completely vertical. So like we often find ourselves like falling in the sustainability funds on like the last little corner that they're willing to accept. But like we're not only a software business. So like most of like these funds like are like really heavily invested in AI right now. So like when we go like pitch tours, they're like, you don't meet AI. The thesis, right? So like it definitely is an interesting landscape. It was a little bit easier. Like the previous business was like a total consumer play. So like you fit square, you have a really good cult following, you sell a product, it does really well, you have really good growth in terms of revenue, tons of space to keep playing in that market, no problem. Like now you're just going to those funds and saying like, hey, we're ready for the next step. Here's what those use of funds look like. Like they either decide on the spot, or like if you have the decision maker as like the person there, or they go to their committees. In some of these more like government-based subsidized funds have like many committees and hoops to jump through to give you, which hopefully makes taxpayers feel good.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say, besides, because the raising funds is an amazing, like even the fact that you guys got to like Series A is like still huge. The one, did you guys do any government grants? Because it's an angle that not a lot of people look at necessarily, is the tax credits, the government grants, and just like that's almost a testament to how much work you're willing to put in, because those like processes to get a government grant is friggin' enormous.
We're pretty capital intensive, so like a lot of grants in and around like capital loans, and then there's like if you're running or trying to launch a technology company, the government offers some really great, like the Canadian government offers some really great programs if you're doing anything that's like testing, building, like anything from scratch that you've put in research to, like you can claim. So if you're looking for it, it's IRAP or SRED. Those are the big programs with the Canadian government that like you can really reap some good cash.
Yeah, the shred credits, they pay out really nicely. And there's a lot of companies that'll do it for you too. They'll look at your tax year and go like, oh, I'll give you like 80. Yeah, they take 10%. They take 10% of it, but it's better if you're not going to do it at all. May as well.
Right. Yeah, if you're not going to spend the time, might as well hire somebody to do it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So if somebody was wanting to either work for a startup or start a startup, what are like some things you would tell them to do or not do?
Like start a startup, I'm probably not quite the like like right person for that convo.
Well,
Like,
you've seen enough of them start where you know kind of the there must be some kind of
you
what do you call it?
need
Like
to never
formula that's the same.
Yeah, you need to be like so tough, like so mentally tough if you want to start a startup. Like you could have no bad days. Like that has to be so like the success of your idea or the certainty at which you need to approach the challenge needs to be so 100%, 110%. Like the give up is like the fail, no matter what.
Yeah.
Working for a startup, I think you're looking to, I like to say, like crunch, a 30-year career into 3 years. Like you could learn as much as time you're willing to put in. And if you're willing to work hard, most startups are looking for, that balance between someone who's looking to contribute to something that could be immediate. Like most investors are looking for a 5-year turnaround, right? So like you have to do a hell of a lot of work in those 5 years. Like the other thing about funding is this is not funding for good times. This is funding for results.
You mean not Christmas parties?
No.
That's not the big...
No more Christmas parties allowed. But
that was so 4 years ago.
It gets difficult when you have so many people. Anyways, neither here nor there. Like everyone's like, I'll never work for that company. It's probably good. Like I try and scare people away because like it's better if they think it's going to be worse, right?
Right.
So
better for them to be pleasantly surprised, right?
I sound
You,
like an
you
awful
can't work
human.
from home
right?
and there's no Christmas party.
No Christmas parties allowed.
You work for Scrooge McDuck.
Literally, I canceled birthdays last week, so that's always
Dude,
fun.
we can't. You want to hear something funny? We can't even celebrate birthdays on the real estate team
Good.
because
Birthdays are a joke.
There's a couple. We used to do.
I
Like,
don't want to
cute
know how
things.
old I am.
We used to come in with like cupcakes or something and be like,
Okay.
yay, whatever. Problem is, there's people that have birthdays during like clear off times, like during the holidays,
Okay.
or they've got like during July. Let's say nobody's in office in July. That's like everybody takes July off.
Okay.
Everybody takes most of December off. So they get all miffy when you're celebrating somebody in February and they didn't get celebration.
Okay, why
and-
don't you do like the daycare where the like our kids go to the same daycare?
Dude, if you think I can remember that shit, like I can barely remember when it's somebody's birthday. It's Alex most of the time that does it, but then
Yeah.
obviously she's not going to remember to do it
It's-
after. It's
to
weird
me,
and whatever.
it's not like the fairness thing. To me, it's like this is a bogus day that could be celebrated by you and your family and your friends. What I like to celebrate is someone's work anniversary. If you can like muscle through a year,
That's such a
small prize. If you can muscle through 2 years, a little bit of a bigger prize. But I'd rather,
Do you do that?
well, we give them, like we used to give the birthday days off. And now every year more that you work for us, you get an additional vacation day.
Oh, like in perpetuity? Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, I'm sure eventually we'll have to cap it. Like we're pretty young, so it works right now. But like,
I mean,
hey, if in like 40
dude,
years,
14 years, they
but
get an
it's
extra
so
2
much more
weeks, like,
fun to
that's
celebrate
fine.
something that like matters to the business.
Yeah.
it's also
Oh
so
my God,
harsh
they're-
calling it a daycare.
everyone's gonna
Oh
think
my
I'm
god.
I hope they don't listen to this.
No, my team knows. I'm like saying like the general public.
No, dude, dude, that makes perfect sense. Plus, like, I don't think you'll ever need to cap it. I mean, are you really anticipating somebody staying for 15 years? If they are, what's wrong with giving them 2 weeks off? An extra 3 weeks off.
They already have those. Like
How long what's the vacation time? I'm applying. How much vacation time?
usually like 3 to 4 weeks, something like that.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, I was gonna
But
say, I was
you
gonna
don't
say if
celebrate Christmas, so I don't want to apply anymore.
I say if they make it that far and you're giving them extra time off, great. Like you're still
Yeah.
at the company.
So I gotta throw this out there just because I have to. How have you done so well, and how have you been such a great leader when everyone says it's so hard to do that as a woman? What kind of tips or what can you tell the women listeners right now?
I've had the like huge benefit of working for 2 excellent female founder CEOs.
Awesome.
Also chairs of the board. Like super strong women who came in with a mission and who have successfully accomplished that. So I think I've got a little bit of a cheat code in that, like, I've definitely geared myself towards working for companies that are run by women and care deeply that their boards are minimum 50% women and that our leadership is 50% women. And that gives me like this space to just like be like the leader I want to be and not feel like I have to, be different to stand out. So it's a shitty answer for like female listeners, because like I didn't work so hard at that. I just like made sure the place I was where accepted me for like the person or the leader I wanted to be.
I don't think it's a shitty answer. I think you're like, you put thought into that process. Like you were like, this is what I want to do. And then you executed it.
When you started with her though, was there a board of directors? Was there?
Yeah.
There was. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. From the story that was told, I thought it was like you and her and some loose leaf paper, and then it grew to what it is now.
No. So I joined right after her Series A.
Oh, okay.
So she already,
Understood.
Generally the board, like it wasn't a very complex board, like currently a very complex board of directors. But at that time it was, she had just closed out her Series A, and with like, she had started the business in a storage facility, and started a Kickstarter to prove, prove the market.
Okay.
And like quickly sold out. That little storage unit, like certainly couldn't keep up with demand. And Gildan, has the largest, or had the largest, hosiery factory in Canada that they had abandoned, and they had offshored their operations overseas. And so she had come just to buy more machinery just to fulfill the Kickstarter, and was like, oh, this factory is empty. Is this factory for sale? And so the Series A was like all about like taking over this factory in Montreal, and going from like an 8-person business to like a 60-person business overnight. So
that's so good.
Cool.
Yeah, it was neat.
I love that.
Yeah.
Cool. How do you balance your life? You're obviously, you just said that you're asleep at night. Not sleeping at night. Gray hair, stressing over the business. How do you juggle that with 2 kids and a husband and a house and a fucking vacations and whatever? How does life work for Sam Colby?
I'm like trying to think of like a not weird quotable thing to say in this like thing. I'm like afraid you're gonna put my face next to like sleep when you're dead. Like, but
yeah, sleep when you're dead.
Yeah. But no, I think it's bursty. Like there isn't a lot of balance, and then when you have a chance and things are like quiet for, you know, a couple weeks, like Logan knows, the month of July I try and like go underground. Like I work really, really, really hard for 11 months of the year, and then like don't even look at a phone for 4 weeks of the year, which doesn't seem like a lot, but like there is always
definitely seem like a lot.
A break. Oh yeah.
4 weeks of not looking at your phone. Well, obviously you're looking at your phone a little bit, but like that's still a lot to be like, I'm out for a month. Like,
but even like, okay, so October is like a really, really crazy month for us, like super crazy. And then November is even crazier because of like we have a like pretty heavy duty US like following, and so like 85% of our sales are in the US. So Black Friday, Cyber Monday, like we are gearing up for this. Like September, October's nuts, and then November's nuts. Like you would think December is that, but like we all kind of like take the deep breath between December 15th and Boxing Day, and it's okay, right? Because like you just sprinted for like 16 weeks straight. Yeah. So like the work-life balance doesn't come on a day to day over day calculation in my mind. It's like overall in the calendar year, did you make sure that you had enough time to like recoup from like where you were like almost like, you know, crashing? Yeah. The kids thing is difficult. Like there's no good answer to this. Like you go home, you pick them up from daycare, you cook okay-ish dinner for their health, maybe, I don't know, and then you open your computer and you do another full day of work. Like this isn't like the work put in, it matters. Like what you put in, you get out. And I'm sure there are versions of this that like someone could be smarter. Like my entire career is built on effort and brute force. Like I don't really have much else.
I think good careers are built on that, and it's maintained with something different. So it's like once you guys get to where I know you guys are going to get to, you won't have to use as much brute force.
Yeah, but do I do another one after?
Oh, that's up to you.
Yeah. That's the real.
It sounds like you want to do another one.
One more. I think one more.
Have you met Bruce?
One more.
That's awesome. Why do you still live in Montreal?
So, by accident.
Okay.
I love Montreal, by the way. Sorry.
I literally called Montreal's Elite Unleashed. So like, obviously I love Montreal too, but there's always that inkling in the back of your head. Like, why are you paying 50% tax? Why are you paying so much tax? Why are you paying so much tax? Like, you could move to Florida and pay nothing.
Like, we run our business here because of hydroelectricity. So, like,
You could move to Florida and pay nothing.
like, we run our business here because of hydroelectricity. So, like,
Okay.
like that is a factor.
Right.
I think if that weren't the case, probably we would have gone and done a couple of years somewhere else.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Um,
It's crazy, eh? The cost of electricity here versus elsewhere. It's mind blowing.
Like, people always ask
even
us,
just
like,
in Ontario.
yeah.
Dude, I was in Omaha because I run the coaching business out of Omaha, Nebraska. I was in Omaha, Nebraska, and I looked it up, and it was like 22 cents American per kilowatt.
Yeah, we
Versus our 7.
We know way too much about electricity costs for some reason.
For some
For some
reason that
reason.
may or may not include Bitcoin. No, yeah, it's crazy how expensive electricity is
Yeah.
everywhere else. Like, my sister lives in Australia. She can't use her dryer.
Oh, that's wild.
She can't
Yeah,
use her
it's
dryer
crazy.
because it costs like $7 to do a
Moist
fucking
clothes.
dry load.
Yeah.
I didn't
She
even,
just hangs them outside.
I didn't even think, like, when you say, like, it, yeah, you're like, I didn't
Makes
even think
perfect
about
sense.
electricity costs when it comes to textiles, but textile electricity, it
Well,
makes so much sense.
And we manufacture the raw mat, right? Which is a hyper energy, like, high consumption.
What's the hydro bill? Do you get billed every 2 months like a normal person, or are
I
you
don't
guys?
know, I'd have to come back to you.
Oh man, I
Put that
wanted to
one
know
on
that
there.
number so bad.
That's maybe the only thing I won't share on the podcast.
Yeah, fair enough. Oh my god.
But yeah, so before we moved to the facility on the Trans-Canada, we had done like a pretty intense study. Do we go back to Ontario? Do we, look elsewhere? Like, being in North America was really, really important to us. But everywhere we looked, we were like, crap, staying in Quebec.
Literally less than you're saving like
It's so
60%.
It's so obvious. I didn't even realize. Stupid. I didn't even realize that.
It's
Do
like,
do you guys sign like long-term contracts for energy usage, or is it all just
yeah,
like
that's all
you're-
like currently. That's
'Cause
part of like
that's-
today's disaster of a conversation with the board. But yeah, it's all good.
because that's the one thing, like, the people believe energy costs are going to go lower and lower with like across the board. Like, Quebec's amazing, we have hydro, but there's, even when you look at like the US, they're starting to do more of those micro nuclear facilities, right?
Yeah.
And solar and everything. So
Yeah, we
it's
got
like,
pitched on it. The costs were like the infrastructure costs are so high
For which, solar or
To
nuclear?
solar.
Yeah.
I was gonna, like, you build your own nuclear plant. Cool.
New.
Like solar on the roof, like putting on your facility.
Just any like alt to hydro was
Yeah.
more expensive.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense in Quebec.
No.
It makes 0 sense in Quebec.
But yeah, I think Montreal's great.
Okay, fine.
Yeah. You're
Good.
okay with that?
Yeah, I love that answer. It's good. Obviously, we did a lot of talk of like discouraging people and stuff today, which is awesome. But I wanted to talk about what like the best, what was like the best day that you've had working for SheerTex in the last, let's say, I don't know, let's go 6 months.
Okay, cool.
And it doesn't have to be here. It could be you were traveling or something like that. It was like,
Oh no, I'd rather be here.
fair enough. So
Like, traveling alone, like, so the reason for traveling is mostly sales, right? So like, is selling units to different retailers in Europe and in the US.
do you guys have a dedicated sales team?
It is.
Oh, hi. Oh, hi. Good to meet you, dedicated sales team.
But I do freshly have a new team that's helping with it. So
Oh,
that's
that's cool.
exciting. Yeah.
You were the only salesperson? Like, you were the dedicated sales team? Just
Kat and I, yeah.
oh, wild.
That's so cool.
Yeah. But we've
Great.
grown.
I mean, no one knows the product better than the founders, right? So
Right.
like,
Yeah.
fuck yeah.
I'm not a founder.
No,
just
but
to clarify.
yeah,
She
but
is.
you know what I mean. Like, you,
Yeah. And people feel that in a room.
yeah.
Like, we were just at Costco in Seattle, and when you bring in the CEO, like, they were like, "Oh, who's with you?" I was like, "I brought in the big boss for this one," and they were like, fangirling, and like, it's fun.
That's so cool.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. What was the question?
Best day in the last 6 months.
Oh yeah, so easy. So we ran this really fun material science summit at our factory.
Is that the one on your Instagram?
Yeah,
Sick.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we ran that a couple months ago, and it was so neat to fly in so many cool, like, people who had just, started out their material science company. So making something physical, like, could be hardware, like a lot of robotics, things like that, that are doing neat things in that space. And then did a second panel of people who had been Series C, Series D, like pretty high revenue numbers. And it was really neat to bring in so many experts in our space, because it's easy to feel quite alone, like building a vertical business in North America and like tackling things that are hard and like pretty like strong, like investors expect a lot. Like they're sitting behind their screens, like crunching numbers, but there's like a real operational challenge outside of just numbers. And so it was really neat to bring together like all these experts and like create this like really fun environment for them to get to exchange. And we did like a really fun happy hour, but we like flipped our construction zone into this like kick-ass event space, and afterwards we just like kind of like sat down and we were like, well, that was fucking cool.
That's cool, man.
Like 150 people in like our construction zone, like we had to like plug the sewage holes because it kind of smelled, and you know what I mean, like it's like but it's fun. You sit down and you like have a glass of wine after, and you're like, okay, shit, that was cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's wicked.
Yeah, you guys?
I don't have good days. No, I'm kidding. It's all about when you say something serious, getting real close to the mic. Man, best day in the last, probably when I got approved for all the mortgages that I'd been applying for in the last few months.
After that.
Yeah, I'm still jacked up about it because it's just nonstop. We're just buying, which is so cool. So I'm super, super jacked up about that.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I would say
Bruce is gonna say the election because BTC pamped. It pamped so hard.
I'll go deep, and you'll like this. So we employ like we always try to help out our friends, and we do employ some like Mikey we went to high school with.
Yeah.
And part of Logan buying all these companies, and Mikey's been working with me almost every day. But giving him ownership in a company and having him be the most excited about it.
Yeah, it was
and
really
just
cool.
like have him go like, oh, I'm so happy to be like, you just saw when you're talking about work ethic and like wanting to like put in that extra little bit of work, and just seeing someone so happy about having ownership, like it was very cool.
Yeah, he was so jacked up because it's so cool. Like it all worked because he owns the property management company that is fun. Anyway, long story short, he owns the property management company to a certain degree, but he's just pumped about being an owner of a company.
But it adds to like your contributions to anything, right?
Yeah.
Like why do you keep going when shit's hard? It's like, you're like, well, when it succeeds, I will personally reap the benefits of that.
Yeah. Exactly.
So just like all these pieces, like it wasn't just like we didn't just decide, okay, we're putting together a property management company. It's like all the pieces that we've been working for the last 5, 7, 10 years finally came together, and it was like, okay, this thing now works.
And it's neat to like reward someone who's like never said no, like has that like grind of like no job was too small, but
no,
could
only
do
jobs,
the big job.
only jobs were too big. No job was too small for Mikey. It was only that the jobs were too big.
But it's like so fun to reward someone who's just like grinding for like the cause, and then like there is like a nice reward at the end of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's the good day.
Well, Bruce, yours was cuter than mine.
I know.
So
Sorry.
Now I'm mad.
I made money.
Cut it out.
I set my family up for success. Boring.
All right.
Any kind of parting notes that you have to any of the potential listeners who are, by the way, the idea is that the podcast is designed for hustlers looking to level up their lives, whether that's hustling to be an entrepreneur or work for an entrepreneurial company or whatever that might be. Parting words for the listeners.
Honestly, I think like talking about Mikey is like a nice way to close it up, because I think for me at least, like if it's like you kind of see yourself and you're like floating in corporate and you know you're not a developer, you're not specifically in marketing, like not saying no and just like putting on that humble hat and being able to like try every day to make a positive impact on like whatever environment you're in, even if that's like, and I went to go buy plants like on Hymus the other day, and I was like, oh, this is like a 12-person operation. Like if you're there and like you're making that 12-person operation better, like you're gonna do good things. Like, and the second thing would be like not to sell yourself short. Like there are many points in my life where I was like, I'm a piece of shit, I shouldn't be here. Like, and then I was like, oh shit, no, like I'm doing more than all these super educated people. Like I'm doing way more and making way more money for this business. And I should just own that, like, there is a different way to approach success, which is that maybe you're not the smartest person in the room, but you're like willing to listen, you're willing to learn, and you're willing to work fucking hard. And like, yeah, different.
Hard work pays off.
Hard work pays off sometimes.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time and sitting down with us
sure.
and having a pint. We'll grab another one, but
Yeah.
you won't be here.
Oh, no.
Thanks for everybody for listening.
Thanks.
And we'll catch you next time. This was Montreal's Elite Unleashed, the podcast for hustlers looking to level up their lives. And also, thank you, Bruce, for co-hosting.
Oh, that was cute.
I'm John Ehrlich. I'll see you next week.
Thanks, John.